Hello, Year 5, and welcome to today's history lesson called What Were the Laws in the Anglo-Saxon Period? Just as usual, we have some knowing more and remembering more questions. In order for you to be able to answer these questions, you need to have completed the work that was set in your learning pack for this week. And so if you haven't yet completed the history work in your learning pack, I would say to pause the video, carry it out, and then return. And then you'll be able to answer these knowing more and remembering more questions. Number 1, Anglo-Saxon settlers brought Christianity with them to Britain. Is this true or is this false? Number 2, who was the first Anglo-Saxon king to be converted to Christianity in 596 AD? Was it 1, Aethelbert, 2, Alfred the Great, 3, Augustine, or 4, Guthrum? Number 3, what is a missionary? Number 4, before 596 AD, what were the beliefs of Anglo-Saxons? Now, I would say to pause the video and on a piece of paper and with a pen, write out what your answers are. And then when you're ready, you can press play to see the answers. So the answer to number 1 was that it is false. If you've completed the work in your learning pack, you will know that it was actually the Romans who brought Christianity with them to Britain. Number 2, who was the first Anglo-Saxon king to be converted to Christianity? We know that that was King Aethelbert. Question 3, what is a missionary? Because of the book that we are currently reading in Class Novel, as well as the work in our learning pack, you would be able to say a missionary is a person who travels to convert people to a different religion. The answer to question 4 is the beliefs of Anglo-Saxons are polytheistic paganism. This is a belief in many gods related to nature. Give yourself a mark out of 4, and then when you are ready, you can continue with our lesson. So, what were the laws in the Anglo-Saxon period is our title for today's lesson. To be successful in today's lesson, you should, number 1, know that there were different punishments used in the Anglo-Saxon period and be able to share what some of these punishments were. You should be able to explain the Anglo-Saxon crime and punishment process. Number 3, you should be able to organize historical knowledge. And as a challenge, you'll be able to create a diagram summarizing your learning. So here we have the knowledge organizer for this term in history. I've highlighted the key terms that will be useful for today's lesson. A Gimot is a meeting of the Witan, who were the king's council, where laws were spoken over. An ordeal is an Anglo-Saxon test to see if the suspect was guilty or innocent. Number 3, a wergild is a compensation which was paid by criminals to the victims or families of victims they've injured or killed. In the year 604 AD, King Aethelbert of Kent published the first law code. These key pieces of information will be helpful for today's lesson. Now, keywords that you already know are the words law, rules, and crime. Keywords that you will meet in the course of today's lesson are the words wergild, corporal punishment, capital punishment, trial by ordeal, and Gimot. I would say to pause the video and say each of these terms out loud, and that will help you to remember that the information that comes up that is linked to these words is really key. Awesome. Kings ruled with a group of important men called a witan at a meeting called a gimot. The witan would speak about laws and crime. Laws in Anglo-Saxon England were not initially written out. In place of this, they were passed by word of mouth. King Aethelbert of Kent published the first laws setting out punishments for each crime. Why do you think it was important for the king to set laws and punishments? Take a moment to think, pause the video, and write out your answer. When you're ready, you can press play. There were different punishments depending on how bad the crime was and who it was committed against. What punishments do you think that the Anglo-Saxon people used? Once more, pause the video and list some ideas, and then we will see what your predictions were like in terms of what they actually used to use to punish people. You can pause the video now. Here is an image of an Anglo-Saxon village. Anglo-Saxon society was based on small farming communities who shared the responsibility for maintaining law and order in the village. In a village, if there was no police force, which was the case for the Anglo-Saxon communities, how do you think the community ensured that people followed the king's law? Have a moment just to think in your head. How could they have ensured that people followed the king's law? Every male over the age of 12 joined a tithing. This was a group of 10 men who were responsible for each other's behavior. If one broke the law, the other members of the tithing had to bring him to court or pay a fine. This meant there was a group responsibility for stopping crime. How do you think Anglo-Saxon villagers caught thieves? Take a moment, think, and let's see. Hue and cry. When a village wanted to find a criminal, the people would call upon everyone else in the community to find the criminal. This process was called a hue and cry. Looking at the larger picture here, what can you learn from this modern illustration of an Anglo-Saxon hue and cry? What types of people can you see? Who is chasing who? What do you think that the criminal might have carried out? When you're ready, you can press pause, have a think, and then press play. This man just killed my brother. Justice must be served. As time went on, courts were introduced where officials would decide whether the accused was guilty or not. The criminals would bring what were called oath helpers, who would swear that the accused had not committed the crime. How would this kind of an accusation be dealt with in today's criminal court proceedings? How would it be handled now? So, the process in the Anglo-Saxon period would look like a tithing group or a hue and cry in a village would bring the accused person to court. Now, the court was called a 100 court or a county court, where officials would investigate serious crimes. If it's a thing where there were people that were called oath helpers that were available to testify and say this person is innocent, then they would be declared innocent and that would be the end of the case. If it's a thing where there were no oath helpers and the person maintained that they were innocent and that they didn't complete or carry out the crime, what do you think would happen next? Let's see. If a choice could not be made as to whether or not the person was innocent, sometimes there would be a trial by ordeal. The Anglo-Saxons believed that God would decide if the person was guilty or not. The accused could choose which ordeal to go through. So, remembering the grid that I just previously showed you, and I'm beginning at the top now, it was a thing where there were no oath helpers, but the suspect maintained that they were innocent, there would then be a trial by ordeal. If the person lived through it without any kind of an injury or an infection, then the court would declare this person was innocent. If they lived through it, however, they lived with an injury or they got an infection from the ordeal, then the court would declare that they were guilty. What can we learn about Anglo-Saxon punishments? Pause the slides and read through the content that is written on the slides. Do that now. Can you list the punishments that are included here? There are 3 key gruesome punishments. Let's see if you can list each one. When you're ready, you can press pause, and then when you've listed, you can press play. Here are some Anglo-Saxon punishments. Once more, you can press pause and read each one. Once you have, I'd like you to, in your head, think, how would you describe these punishments that were used at the time? When you are ready, you can press pause. Once you have read through all of the punishments, you can press play. A word guild was a payment system that was used in the Anglo-Saxon period to sort out disputes between the criminal and the victim or the victim's family. A word guild would be paid if someone was killed, and the amount depended on how important the victim was. Here is a word guild listing. Killing a noble was 300 shillings, killing a freeman was 100, and killing a slave was 20. Why do you think that the king set the harshest punishments for killing wealthy people? What do you think this shows us about what Anglo-Saxon society was like? Pause the video and note down your answers, and then when you're ready, you can press play. Now, your task is to create a diagram explaining how people who were accused were found guilty in Anglo-Saxon Britain. To support you, you can pause the video and rewind, or you can use the hints that I am showing on the screen now. When you are ready, you can pause the video here, complete your task, and then as soon as you have, you can go onto Purple Mash and complete the quiz that I have set for you on there. I look forward to seeing how you do on the quiz. See you next week.